Welcome to the 2013 Employee Benefits Series. For those of you who are just joining us for the first time today, my name is Gretchen Osborne and I'm the Employee Benefits Manager at Sikich. We're going to be talking today about the minimum coverage test. As I stated earlier, we test on an annual basis to prevent retirement plans from overly favoring highly compensated employees. The first test that must be done is the 410B minimum coverage test. The coverage test compares the participation and contribution rates of the HCEs to the non-HCEs. The coverage test ensures that the employer has certain levels of coverage across the organization and that the plan is not discriminating in favor of the HCEs. There are two coverage tests. We have the ratio percentage test, and then there's the average benefit test. If the ratio percentage test passes, then no further action is necessary. However, if it fails, then the plan sponsor essentially has two choices: expand coverage to pass the ratio percentage test or pass the average benefit test. We're going to focus today on the ratio percentage test. Most plans pass the ratio percentage test. However, if your plan fails, then we're going to have a supplemental discussion with you about the average benefit test and its application. As we discussed earlier, testing raises several fundamental questions. When we test your plan, confirming who the employer is and what employees must be counted is complex, and it requires careful application of some detailed rules. The retirement plan questionnaire and the census, they're very important. That's where we address all of these questions. Who is the employer? Usually it's a single entity, but it could be a controlled group or an affiliated service group. Who's an employee? Who do we include in the coverage test? Well, coverage testing takes into account all employees who receive compensation during the testing year, including all employees of other companies that belong to the same controlled group or affiliated service group. It's important to note that we have on the employee disclosure section within the retirement plan questionnaire, there's questions that ask for details on part-time employees, temporary employees, seasonal employees, leased employees. So it's important to address these questions. The failure to consider them and others in the retirement plan questionnaire could mean inaccurate coverage test results. Let's take the ratio percentage test step by step. First, we're going to identify the employer, then we're going to identify the workforce. Then step 3, we'll identify excludable employees. That would be employees who do not satisfy the plan's age and service requirements, participants who terminate with 500 or fewer hours of service for the plan year and do not benefit. It could be collectively bargained employees or non-resident aliens without U.S. source income. And then from there, we'll determine the coverage testing group. Now, step 5, once the coverage testing group is determined, we identify the HCEs and the non-HCEs. Remember, an employee is considered an HCE if he or she has met either the 5% owner test or the compensation test. And it's also important to note that each component of the plan, the employer component, the 401k, salary deferral component, the employer match component, each component must pass coverage separately. And then step 6, we determine who within the coverage testing group is benefiting. Whether an employee benefits from the plan depends on the component of the plan. What that means is, if we're testing the employer component of the plan, an employee benefits under the plan if his or her account balance receives an allocation of the employer contributions and forfeitures for the plan year. If we are testing the 401k component of the plan, the salary deferrals, then an employee benefits if he or she is eligible to make deferrals. And then on the match portion, an employee is considered benefiting if he or she is eligible for the match contribution. Step 7, we determine the ratio percentage by taking the non-highly compensated employee benefiting ratio and dividing it by the highly compensated employee benefiting ratio. The ratio percentage must be 70% to pass. Let's take a look at a sample plan here. In this first example, we see the 401k component, the salary deferral component. And as you can see, there's the non-highly compensated employee benefiting ratio and the highly compensated employee benefiting ratio. And we've taken the non-highly compensated employee benefiting ratio and divided it by the highly compensated employee benefiting ratio for 100%, for a ratio percentage of 100%. And so the 401k component passes. And for the 401m component, which would be the match, it passes as well. Again, the ratio percentage is 100%. We took the non-highly compensated benefiting ratio and divided it by the highly compensated benefiting ratio. And then for the 401a4 ratio percentage for the profit sharing component, we have another pass. Again, we took the non-highly compensated employee benefiting ratio and divided it by the highly compensated benefiting ratio, and it was more than 70% as well. And then this last screen is a summary, and it shows you the three components, and all three plans have passed the coverage test. So the average benefit test would not be necessary because they have passed the ratio percentage test. A plan covering collectively bargained employees automatically passes coverage. If there are no non-excludable, non-benefiting, non-HCEs, the plan will automatically pass coverage. If there are no HCEs benefiting, the plan automatically passes coverage. And that will conclude our presentation on coverage. Please be sure to join us for 20 minutes to understanding your ADP and ACP test results. Thanks so much for joining us.